I'm not ready. Let's talk Star Wars. And like I said, we're going to be doing our review of the Revenge of the Sith Deluxe Edition. Before we do that, let me get my notes ready so I'm not looking to the side and I can pay attention to you guys as we're doing this. All right, here we go. So, almost. There we go. I like this one a little bit better. Yeah, that's fine. All right, so before we start with the actual book, I gotta say, sorry, I got here we go. All right, now we got it. So I mentioned this when we got it. I'll wait a little bit. So this book just came out this past week on Tuesday, October 14th. Again, this is a celebration of the 20th anniversary of Revenge of the Sith movie and the novelization by Matthew Stover. There's that great cover. We'll be talking about that more in a second. The book design was done by Edwin A. Vasquez. It has a removable acetate jacket, which you can see. Let me just take it off real quick, which has the silhouette of Darth Vader. There you go. So you can. It's just removable, but it's great. It has that Darth Vader silhouette there and some information in the back. Let me just put that down. And then once you remove that acetate, it's a wraparound cover of the Mustafar duel. You have Darth Vader and Obi-Wan right there, or around the lava of Mustafar. It has a Star Wars splash page that's designed by Elizabeth A. Eno, which has Anakin and Padme on there. Look at that, how beautiful that looks. There you go. Like I mentioned, the cover art and the front end paper is done by Eric Tiemens. Again, it features Anakin Skywalker and Padme as a loving couple. And that's this one right here. Look at that. As soon as you open the book, what could have been the loving couple right there? And then a back end paper by Ryan Church, which highlights the birth of Darth Vader. So again, I know this book, a lot of you guys have it already. Oops, sorry about that. And also the red ink around the pages with the phrase, "This is how it feels to be Anakin Skywalker forever." And it's right there. I'll tell you why that's there. So again, this book is a 20th anniversary. It's a deluxe edition. Most Star Wars fans that read books, that read novelization, have read this already. So you might think, why am I going to buy this book again? I already have it. One thing I would say a little negative, it's pretty expensive. I think it's about $50 is what it's the retail price. I don't know if you can find that a little bit cheaper. It's a hardcover book, amazing art. Just by the art itself, I think it's worth it. But it's what's inside. Apart from the story, I'm not going to talk about the story today. You guys know it. There's a reason it's one of the most beloved Star Wars novelizations, and it's usually in the list of people's favorite Star Wars book of all time. So I'm not going to go into how great it is, because we already know that. You guys know that it expands on a lot of the scenes from the book. Just the beginning scene of the battle over Coruscant is about a third of the book, and Matthew Stowers on the annotations goes over why he decided to make that introduction so long. I mean, the battle over Coruscant and the rescue of the Emperor, or at that point of Chancellor Palpatine, why that scene is so long in the book. He explains that in the annotations. But another great thing about this deluxe edition is the author's note. So it starts with a new author's note, which is about Matthew Stover and his meeting with George Lucas, which is, as a fan, right? All of us as fans of Star Wars would love to meet George Lucas. But also imagine the pressure and the stress of having to write a Star Wars book, a novelization to what at that point was the last Star Wars movie that was coming out. There was no news of the sequel trilogies, Rebels, Clone Wars. There was no other Star Wars movie coming out. So imagine having to write the novelization to the culmination of all of Star Wars. So Matthew Stover goes into the stress and how he felt going to that meeting, going to Skywalker Ranch and sitting down with George Lucas, and all the notes that he had. He had like 30 different notes that he wanted to kind of tell George that was his idea, his vision for the novelization. I think he says he only got to about number 8 or something. It's like, okay, that's enough. Let's just talk a little bit more about what the book is. He goes deep into his decision to incorporate elements from the expanded universe, legends, whatever you want to call it. I believe it's called expanded universe in this author's note. That it gives more heft and more backstory to the character. So hopefully it makes the reader more invested into the relationship. So a lot of people, maybe they haven't read the extended universe or the extended universe, just only seen the movies. So adding those little tidbits gives a little bit more weight to that relationship between the characters. When Anakin and Obi-Wan are talking about, oh, this is the 10th time I've saved you. Oh, ninth, that the one on Caton Emodia doesn't count, which now that has been covered in a different book. But giving a little bit of hints, kind of Easter eggs about things that happen in the expanded universe that might not be canon, quote unquote, but it gives more heft to those characters. And when something bad happens to them, there's a bigger relationship between them. And also as a gift for people that have read the expanded universe, kind of really, oh yeah, I remember when I read that part. So it gives them a little bit more of a, I don't know, like a thank you. A thank you for reading the expanded universe. So I love getting that. It was very interesting to see that right now we're used to everything's being so secretive with Star Wars, with Lucasfilm, with any big franchise, that the novelizations, any art of book, nothing comes before the movie. So the TV show, everything comes usually months after or years after. So this book, the original one, came out before the movie was released. Matthew Stowe, of course, hadn't seen the movie. He only had the original script or the initial script for the movie. And then, as he calls it, the collective Lucasfilm knowledge of Star Wars. So he sat down with a bunch of people to talk about Star Wars, had the initial script. As we know, scripts change as they're filming the movie. So a lot of things, some things that he goes into that in the annotations don't match from what he had read in the initial script. Or then when he saw the movie, some things were a little bit different. And he explains how those things kind of work out. So it's that difficult of writing a story also where the main plot is already been spoiled. We all know that Anakin Skywalker is going to fall to the dark side. We knew that it was going to happen to Mustafar. He was going to get burned up. So we already know what the combination of the story is. So it's very hard for him to figure out how to tell that story when the main plot is already known. So he goes into those details. And then about making it a Greek tragedy. Star Wars, he says, mythology is very Greek mythology oriented. So he went into writing Anakin's fall as a Greek tragedy and a Greek mythology. And that's how he went into the flow of the book, some of the literary decisions that he decided to do. And then, of course, it's that meeting with George Lucas, sitting down with him, explaining him all the points that he wants to get into the book. And George basically saying, or he asked George, hey, do you want me to go bit by bit, right as it's on the script, or do I have a little bit more leeway? And George was like, you do what you need to do, just make it good. And just that little tidbit would just drive me insane if George Lucas or whoever's the creator of this, something that you're trying to expand on, just tells you, hey, just make it good. Do whatever you want, just make it good. And as we all know, he did make it good because, again, that novelization for Revenge of the Sith is one of the most beloved Star Wars stories out there. All right, so let's go into the annotations. And I think we already know, if you guys have heard it's got over 170 annotations. And like any great Greek mythological book, annotations are very important. It elevates the story by giving the reader extra content into the writer's intentions behind the different literary decisions that he makes and story choices, story bits. It's funny because right before I started reading this, I was rereading the Iliad, which actually is right down there. And that one has thousands of annotations. I was in that mood of reading a novel, seeing an annotation, going to the back, figuring out what the intention was at that point. So now reading that in a Star Wars setting was very interesting. A cool flow for my reading kind of sensations at that moment. But annotations add a lot to the story. So if you've already read that book, you know it backwards and forwards, just grabbing it and going to the annotations and finding where they match in the story was very interesting. That's the way I did it right now. Just went straight to the annotations after the author's note. I'll reread it in a couple of months after all the other Star Wars books have come out. But yeah, if you just want to go straight to the annotation, it's a great way to kind of get a sense of the story as it was being written. Matthew Stover does a great thing. He talks about it again in those annotations. It's the use of freeze frame chapters or point of view chapters. So a lot of them, like I mentioned in the letters there on the side of the book, that it says this is what it feels like to be Anakin Skywalker forever. There's a lot of times in the book when he writes, this is how it feels to be X. For Anakin, this is how it feels to be Anakin Skywalker right now, till it gets to that point to forever. But he does that with a lot of different characters, with Anakin, with Obi-Wan Kenobi, with Count Dooku, who's very interesting, Mace Windu, and then, of course, at the end with Darth Vader. So those freeze frame kind of point of view chapters, very important to get into the mindset of the characters at that point, and moves it away from what just being a one-to-one description of what we're seeing on screen. So it gives you a different point of view. And again, very Greek mythological book centered by character, not just by the flow of the story, but how characters are seeing the story flow through their eyes. So it's very interesting to see he's not just explaining why he's doing the freeze frame, but explain what that freeze frame chapter means for each of those characters. So it goes into detail into those. It's very interesting to get more information about how that works. And as someone, as an avid reader and quote unquote wannabe writer that I've self-published some things, I read the way that his mind works. I'm like, oh man, I'm so many steps behind. I gotta work into it. But again, we all write different. But it was very interesting to see how other writers, their mindset and their process as they're writing something like this, and gives people ideas on how to then navigate our own stories we might be creating. How he goes is very cool because Duke, as we know, is this character that has this feeling of superiority over everyone. So Matt Sober goes into how Palpatine uses those characteristics of Dooku, his arrogance, his self-aggrandizing, smartness, his feeling of superiority, and uses them and uses that to turn him to the dark side, feeding him false information about what the grand plan is for Anakin Skywalker. Oh yes, we'll kill Kenobi, that will turn Anakin down the path to the dark side. We can turn him, and then we can kind of dominate the galaxy, not knowing that the actual end game was for Anakin to end up killing Dooku and then elevating himself next to Palpatine. So using Dooku's own vanity and arrogance against him, and how easy it was for him to turn Dooku. Again, Palpatine being the ultimate manipulator. I found it very interesting reading this. As Star Wars fans, we always talk about why Yoda and Kenobi didn't go together to either fight Palpatine. Why didn't they go together to fight Vader and then join in? Why did Yoda hide out for 20 years on Dagobah? We all talk about it, and we have our own kind of reasoning behind it. So from Matt Stover's point of view, as he was writing this, was so Yoda and Obi-Wan, these two Jedi Masters, didn't go face Darth Sidious together and then go visit Vader Mustafar, because I think Yoda and Kenobi, I think maybe more Obi-Wan, they thought their powers were connected, the dark side kind of feeding out of each other, that if Obi-Wan was able to defeat Darth Vader, that would lessen Palpatine's power or Sidious's dark side powers, and that way Yoda might be able to take him. But unfortunately, that's not how that worked. And then I love it how when Yoda falls in that battle in the Senate, he's falling down, and then he calls Bail Organa to pick him up, and then into exile I must go. Yoda realizes that war in itself is part of the dark side. So the more into war that they are, the more power they're giving to the dark side. So keep on fighting Sidious and keep on fighting the Sith at that time point was only going to make them stronger. So that was why he had to retreat, not die, because if he would die, not that the light dies if the Jedi die, we know that from The Last Jedi, but he needed to survive too when the next person came in at that point, Luke Skywalker, and then Leia, as we know. he'll be able to help kind of orient them a little bit. So that reasoning of, if I keep fighting, I'll just keep feeding the dark side, I just gotta go into hiding. It's a great explanation, even if it's not canon. I'll take it as canon. I love that explanation. Yeah, this is why Yoda decided not to fight anymore and go hide out. Talking about those point of view chapters, he mentions when he's writing Palpatine as Sidious, or when that turn is coming, when he's about to reveal himself to Anakin almost all the way to the end of the book, he doesn't write him as a person, as a human. He writes him as a shadow when that deception is revealed, because he's someone else. He's something else at that point. He's past being a human, basically. He's just the embodiment of evil. And that's why he writes him that way. The use of dramatic irony to bring the readers in into what we think might be a happy ending, a happy point, and then later get the rug pulled out from under us. Even if we know where the story is going, where there's a beginning of the chapter talking about Anakin and Obi-Wan being the greatest or the heroes, they're on TV every day. There's nothing can go wrong as long as Anakin and Obi-Wan are together. And then you know what's going to happen. So that kind of, that dramatic irony was there throughout the book, and he explains those points in those annotations. And of course, it's Star Wars. There's a lot of political undertones into it. The broad outlines of how free societies fall into fascism can be surprisingly predictable. How people, just as soon as Palpatine gets up there and declares the Jedi, the villains, everyone turns, everyone does what they can to make sure to be on his good side. So it's Star Wars. It's always there. There's always the politics behind it. So the annotations, again, over 170 annotations. I think they're very interesting. They add a lot of heft to the story. So again, if you already know this book, at least go into the annotations. It's a great way to get through it. Don't worry, I haven't forgotten about the Sun Dragon. It's very important to this book, very important to the essence of Anakin Skywalker, that is being used by other authors going forward. And we all know about Anakin's Sun Dragon heart, the furnace heart, where how it fuels who he is, the love that he has for everyone. He feels so deeply, and how that is who he is. But it wasn't gonna be that way. What we see in the page now is not the original Matthew Stover story, what he had originally planned for, that metaphor, that what are we gonna call it? That's not what he had planned. I can't believe, just like I mentioned before, how difficult it must have been to meet George Lucas and pitch this story. But he goes on to say that 2 months, I believe it was, after delivering his final manuscript, and it was almost getting ready to go into production and to print, he gets a call from Lucasfilm saying, hey, George doesn't like the dragon stuff. It all has to go, and you got 2.5 days to do it. I think they call him at night and said, you have till the day after tomorrow to figure this out. You had to change everything about the Sun Dragon, which was the biggest thing driving Anakin at that point. That George Lucas doesn't like it. Can you imagine that? I can't. And he goes into how he went to this expletive conversation with a person from Lucasfilm, and how they're, hey, you're going to figure it out. You're fine. It's like, how am I going to figure this out in 2.5 days? And then about 4:30 in the morning, he woke up like, I got it. They were right. And made the necessary changes and send them back. And that's what we get on the book. So the original Sun Dragon motif was integral to Anakin's fall. And for George Lucas, it seemed like the dragon stuff was something that was outside of Anakin, that was driving him towards the dark and towards the turn, that it wasn't his own choice. So I know that we have Palpatine, kind of that voice behind him. I guess the way it was written first, it seemed like this other entity was driving Anakin to make those choices instead of being Anakin's decision. That we always talk, don't blame the Jedi, don't blame Yoda, don't blame Mace Windu for Anakin's fall. It was Anakin, and of course Darth Sidious. It wasn't another entity trying to pull him down to that path. I guess the way the Sun Dragon was written before, it seemed there was something outside of Anakin driving toward that downfall. So that all had to change. So all right, so again, great novelization, great 20th anniversary deluxe edition. Sorry, I removed the acetate jacket, but let me just, that's fine. I really recommend this book. If you've read the novelization before, I still would say if you have the means to buy this book, go ahead and buy it. It adds a lot to the story. If you're a person that likes to have your books out on a shelf, on a coffee table, you like people looking at them, it's gonna get the conversation started. So I do recommend people get picking this book up. Great author's note, and the Sun Dragon stuff is great. That Sun Dragon Crisis is really great. So yeah, I do recommend this book a lot. I give it like 5 out of 5 stars, or prop drawers, I should say. So go pick it up. It just came out this week, Tuesday, October 14th. So go pick it up. It is great. It gets the Raider Rebellion stamp of approval.
Radio Rebellion.